Morning, everybody. Nice to see you all here. We'll just wait 5 more minutes to see who else joins us, and then we'll get started. Okay, so good morning, guys. How are you guys doing today? Are you good? It's getting colder, more difficult to wake up. Yes? Are you guys a little bit stressed about your submissions? How are you? Tell me. Great. Malema says she's good. Morning. Surviving. Okay, yes, I know it's not easy, especially when you have so many subjects and you have to submit things for so many subjects. You do have to work hard. Okay, so let's get started. So in the last lecture, we finished up with writing, okay, with the different types of essays. And today we are going through information literacy. If you remember a few weeks back, we did speak about the Harvard method. And today we're continuing to see how we can find credible information online. So as you know, we do this regularly now. Just a recap from the previous lecture. Were there any questions from the previous lecture? Remember, if you have no questions, just to write no in the chat. Cool. So who can tell me what are the differences between argumentative, expository, analytical, and persuasive essays? So you can just tell me, you can choose to and tell me the differences between them. So remember we said argumentative, we give good 2 points of view, exactly. So we have a counter argument. Expository is basically listing facts of information. Persuasive essay, yes, it does include opinions and emotions. We use persuasive language, okay? We can also use facts in our persuasive essay. Analytical essays, we just analyze something and we're giving our point of view, okay? A newer take on what we've read or what we've seen, etc. So in your opinion, good, Shirley. In your opinion, are persuasive essays and argumentative essays the same? Good, no, they are not the same. Okay, they are definitely not the same. We said that in an argumentative essay, we give two sides, okay, and then we convince the reader to our side, okay. Yes, so definitely in a persuasive essay, from the word go, you convince them about your point of view, and you also have a call to action. Good, excellent, guys. I'm glad that you've been paying attention. Fantastic. Cool. Any questions before we go on? So Shirley, you can Google online persuasive essay and you will find some information about a persuasive essay. Okay, there's a lot of information. Google is your friend. So sorry, yeah, Sally. So can you combine all forms in one essay? So like we said in the previous essay, we will get different sort of points from each one and we combine them. Okay, so for example, we know in an argumentative essay, we are trying to convince the reader of our side, okay, which is similar to a persuasive essay. So we will use certain parts of each in our essays, of course, but I don't think all forms will be combined into one. Okay, that's a good question. We're going to get to the page just now. So for today's lecture, you can follow in the textbook pages 167 to 183 of chapter 5. Okay. So what is referencing? Remember, if you'd like to answer, you can just write me in the chat and open your mic. Yes, Shirley? Shirley, remember we must say me in the chat. We're not going to use the participants list and the chat. Okay, it's difficult. You can answer, Shirley.
Referencing is when you take someone's idea and viewpoints and you also credit them for it.
Good, okay, good, excellent. So you take information from various sources, okay? And we're going to talk about sources today, and then you credit their ideas. Okay, notice what I'm saying, ideas. Okay. Why do you think referencing is necessary when it comes to academic research? Shall please write me in the chat instead of using the participants list? Yes, okay, Cindy's got some answers in the chat. She says to avoid plagiarism. Yes, Shirley? Yes, Shirley? So good, to give credit to the author. Fantastic. So yes, we need to reference when we get in academic research to show our evidence is credible, where it comes from, who the author is. We can research the author, okay, find out more about the author, okay, and to maintain academic integrity, okay. So what is the difference between academically researched information and personal opinions and experiences? Is it the same thing? So what's the difference? Remember, you can guess and just bring your thought across as well. Good, Shirley. So academic research information definitely has facts. It's factual information. Good. Good, so Cindy. In academic research, you use reliable sources and facts. Excellent. Okay. Now, this is a very interesting question. How does academic research fit into essays? So remember, we spoke about paragraphs and we spoke about building essays. How do you think it fits in? Yes, Kylie, so.
Ma'am, I think it fits in where you have to give examples to back up your point for your paragraph and yeah.
Yes, very good, exactly. So we tie it back into our paragraphs. Remember, we said we need to have a topic sentence. We need to have evidence, okay, in each of our paragraphs. And then we can give some of our own opinions or thoughts about that. So we need to have academically researched information in our essays. I see some excellent answers in the chat. Some essays require facts. You need to have some facts. Good. So we need for our information to be credible, to have some credibility, okay, to show that what we are saying has been backed up by researched evidence. Fantastic, guys. So when we write academically, we need to either explain a topic or make an argument about it. And we need to do investigation. Remember, Google is your friend. So academic research is a process of gathering information about a topic, evaluating, and then using that information to say something new about the topic. Okay, so we bring our own viewpoint across. From all the research, we bring our own viewpoint across. So let's look at the basic steps. We create a research question and a hypothesis. We gather information from reliable outside sources, okay, to test it. And then from this information, we form a viewpoint, and the information from these sources will support our viewpoints. And of course, we know we have to give credit to the outside sources in our writing. How do we give credit at Boston Media House? What method do we use? Yes, so I've been receiving so many emails and I don't understand why, because I think I've given so many of you guys lots of information about Harvard referencing guides and Cite for Me and other links. And the amount of emails I've been receiving is enormous about referencing. So make sure, if you didn't come to my previous lectures, that you research a guide that will help you to reference and to reference correctly. Questions, comments? By the way, Kylie, so I think it was you that asked me if a rhetorical question can be used as a thesis statement. Was it you? You can just say no in the chat. Okay. So if I didn't tell you guys before, I'm telling you now, you cannot use a rhetorical question as a thesis statement. I can't remember which class, somebody did ask me that question. I'm just reiterating that point. Yes, you just, those other links that I gave everybody was just for your added information. Okay, so I said to you, if you want to research how to write correctly, grammar, etc., it's just useful links. Okay, that I provided you with so that you can read up more if you'd like. You will need to see certain things, etc., like the punctuation. For example, some people would struggle with the possessive S. Okay, so remember, punctuation changes the meaning of sentences as well. So before an investigation, you need to have a clear idea of what you're trying to find out. So we need to understand, what are they asking from us? What is our research question? Okay, and we also can create a research question as well. So we need to investigate because it determines the kind of sources that are required for the assignment. Okay, so we need to see what kind of information and sources we'll need to back up our research question. Sally, no, it's not wrong. You can use various sources. The internet has a lot of different sources, but we're going to talk about credible sources today, so you can make sure that your sources are actually credible. So a good research question should have the following 6 qualities. It must be something that people care about. You must be able to make an argument about it. It must add something new or solve a problem. So you're giving some new opinion or take on a topic. It must not be too broad or too narrow. So it should be able to be answered in a given time frame and a location, and it should be possible to find the types of sources needed. So once we have our research question, now we need to find good sources to answer it. So what is a good source? It provides accurate, useful, and unbiased information on the topic. Remember, we are all subject to biases, all of us. So we need information that is unbiased, that has been researched thoroughly, that is factual. So remember, on the internet, guys, there's a ton of information that is inaccurate or misleading. Anyone can put anything on the internet. I told you guys in the beginning, when we first started, I have a website and I can write about any topic because I just use it according to digital marketing, and I can put information on the internet, okay, where it can actually be biased. So we need to make sure that we focus on having accurate information, accurate results, and we need to see how we can find that. So we need to determine whether a source has reliable information, and we can do it by looking at certain criteria. So the more of these criteria the source has, the more likely it is to be accurate. So let's look at some of the criteria. So firstly, we look at the author, okay? We need to see who wrote the information. So does the source contain the names of the author or authors? That's very important. Does it contain any information about the credentials of the author? We need to know, is the person who is talking about this topic qualified to talk about it? I mean, do they have a master's degree, an honors degree? Have they been working in the field for many years for them to make this kind of assertions? Okay, any questions? Remember, if you have no questions, to let know in the chats. Yes, Chiga. You can open your mic to speak instead of typing. It takes a longer time.
Okay, ma'am, for the assessment, right? Can you hear me? Ma'am, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am, for the assessment, say I get information from the internet and I use a paraphrasing tool, right? Is that okay, or do you also need to use it? Do you also need to copy that and also use it on the plagiarism tool as well? Because someone might gather information from the same website and use the very same paraphrasing tool, and you might find out the same information.
Yeah, this is why we need to learn how to do paraphrasing by ourselves so we can actually put it in our own words. That's why paraphrasing is a learned kind of task. So yes, you need to input everything into a plagiarism tool to check for plagiarism. And this is why I said you need to write it in your own words, because if I look at your work and I see somebody else's work and I see that the idea is and the words are exactly the same, it's going to be problematic. Okay, so try to take that idea and try to put it in your own words as much as possible. Okay.
Okay.
I didn't.
And
yeah.
If it's my own words, ma'am, right? I need to take my own words and put them in a plagiarism tool, right?
So yes, you just need to check if your idea can be found anywhere on the internet for any specific reason. Okay. So, but remember, we as the lecturers will understand, we'll see your writing and we'll know if it comes from somewhere or if it is exactly your own words. But it's just best. I did give you guys that plagiarism tool checker. I'm not going to give any information today because I've given it so many times. So you can input your information there and see if any plagiarism comes up. Okay, just to check and to make sure. What if you, okay, cool. What if you give information that is not credible in the assignment without knowing the source is not credible? Okay, so that's why we are doing today's lecture. Okay, so that's the point of today's lecture. So publishers, we also look at the publishing information. Who distributes this information? What are their goals? Do they have, what is their reputation? Okay, because this can indicate if the information that they give to us is biased. For example, there was a newspaper that was linked to the ANC. I can't remember the name now, and I don't know if it still exists, but we could say that they provided biased information because they have very strong links to the ANC. And I'm just providing an example because that's the one that comes to mind. So we need to see if the source that it comes from is reliable. We can see who the publisher is. Okay, is that publisher an academic, professional, or scholarly organization? Does the organization publish the source have a clear and well-defined purpose? So for example, on the internet, the other day I was reading an article from this online source, and I know for a fact that this online source is created by someone who has a Republican agenda. So I know that it will be filled with biases concerning abortion, vaccination, immigration, and these kinds of topics. Okay. Yes, thanks, yeah, New Age. Thank you so much, New Age newspaper. Yes. So we need to understand who the publisher is to understand their biases and their credibility, etc. Okay, you can even, when you go on the internet, you'll find a lot of biased information about many things, depending on who the publisher is. Questions? Oh, my class ANC does that all the time. Okay, cool, let's continue. So we can look at for who the writing is intended, okay? Is it possible to tell who wrote the content for the source? Who is it for, okay? Is it written for a specific topic or for the general public? Okay, this can help us. And then we're gonna go to the content. So does the content include a reason for providing the information? This is very important to look at the content. Does it have evidence? One of the strongest points is evidence. Is there evidence in the writing? Is it factual information that they're providing? So yes, they're giving us their point of view, but does it contain evidence, research evidence that can be linked to other sources? So this is exactly the other point that I was drawing onto. Are other sources cited in the content? Okay, that makes it the argument stronger and more credible. So if you see various sources, you can link to the sources, you can see what they are saying if it matches to what the content you are reading is saying. Okay, it provides a lot of credibility. Does the content contain elements like graphs, tables, and a bibliography? So a bibliography is important because I can check the credibility of this author. I can see where the information comes from, who the authors are, what the publishing date is. Okay. Are there conclusions based on the provided evidence? Yes, you can. Just give me a second. Shirley, I don't know why you asked me this question so late. So guys, let's go into the second lecture. Here's the link in the chat. So I'll wait for this one to end so that all of you can get the link. Alrighty, so let's continue. So how lengthy is the content? Okay, and the answers to these questions can provide some details about the quality of the source's information. Remember, if we're just going to have like one page, like 50 words, it's not really going to be a lot of credible information. Okay, so the length does matter. Questions, comments? So before we continue, I know that we're definitely going to go into the third lecture today. So let me just give everybody the link right now. Okay, so please take note of the link in the chat for the third lecture, or the third meeting, should I say. Okay, let's continue. So the publication date is important. Who wants to tell me why the publication date is important? Anyone? Good, that's a good try. Good. So yes, so information changes, should we say rather, okay? So this is why we need to check the source's date of publication. It can reveal how accurate or current the information is, okay? So remember, we are constantly getting newer information, newer ways of doing research, and things can change. Okay, new ideas, new information. Remember, a vaccine is not just developed in one go with one piece of research, and the information gets updated over time, especially in the scientific field. So we need to look if our source has a publication date and is it recent enough to provide current information on the topic. Okay, so as I said about science, more recent sources will detail recent discoveries, and they are more accurate than the older ones. So example about cancer, okay, one from 1980 and the one from 2010, and obviously the more recent one is more likely to contain reliable and up-to-date information. So sometimes a source lists several dates. So I think like our textbook, for example, it has been revised and republished several times, okay, and it has several editions, and it's best to use the most recent publication here to cite and source to judge its reliability. Okay, so we need to check the publication date. How long ago did this happen? Okay, how recent is the information? It matters because that information might be so old it's outdated. Okay, so newer research could have gone against that. So we need to constantly check the publication date. A source does not need to meet all the criteria to be accurate or reliable, but also meeting some of the criteria does not necessarily mean that a source is reliable. But the more detail we can find about the source, it's easier to tell if it contains reliable information. Questions or comments? Sorry. Okay, let's go on. So sometimes even an unreliable source can help us come up with ideas for our writing or even point us to more credible sources. So who reads Wikipedia? Let's be honest. I do. Does anybody else? Only Shirley? Oh, Lebogang, great Lebogang. Okay, cool. So yes, so we know that we're gonna learn, we're gonna learn more about open source, etc. in next week's lecture. But yes, of course, we know that anybody can write on Wikipedia, but there is information and there is links to some of the information, okay? And we can discover more reliable sources in this way. I don't know why, like this pop-up does that. Okay, cool. So there are specific kinds of sources that we can use to look for academic information. Okay, textbooks, ebooks, journals, websites. And of course, each of these have specific criteria for us to determine if they are reliable or not. So the first one is a textbook. Of course, you guys have textbooks, and we can look at a foreword, a preface, or by a biographical section that contains information about the qualifications of the authors. So if you guys go to the beginning, right, on the first or second page of your textbook, you will see there it says authors, and it gives all their credentials: journalism, media, English and classical studies, okay, honors, PG DIP, PGCE, etc. Okay, so that kind of information is important because we can see what knowledge, okay, do these authors have about this topic. If a textbook is published by a university press, okay, the information is provided is likely to be reliable. So we also need to look at the university standing academically, which country it's from, etc., etc. What are their research methods? Okay. Reviews written about a book that detail the intended audience and the purpose of the textbook. Okay, so reviews are helpful to see what other people say about it. Okay, and they're analyzing this textbook to say whether it's biased or unbiased, so we can actually read reviews about it. And then the publication information, of course, and we can see that in our textbook as well. We can say first published in 2019, first edition, first impression. Okay, so yes, this textbook is the newer or a newer textbook. Okay, so yes, that gives us information about it to see that it's updated, it's new, it's relevant. Questions? So if we look on page 175 of our textbook, here it gives us an example of a copyright page. Okay, who wrote this book, the year it was published, who the publisher is. Okay, somebody's microphone is open. Cindy. Okay, so we need to, it gives us information from a credible university. Berkeley is an incredible, credible university. I was telling some of the second years about information, and it came from Berkeley, and they didn't want to believe me, but it's a very credible university. Okay, so we can trust the information. So then we look at the author at the bottom. It says 2001 copyright by Carl Jacobi. And then if we do some research about this author, we can find more information about him. And we can see that he's a history professor, he's won several awards, etc., etc. So it shows that anything that this author says is most likely to be trusted. Okay, but if we found that he's involved in an organization that does something that is. Cindy, why is your microphone always opening? So if we find that this author has links to some kind of organization where it can promote some biased views, etc., okay, then we really need to think about this information, and it will come across as having some kind of bias. Okay, like Sia said, the New Age newspaper, of course, it's biased because it will have a lot of information that promotes the ANC because it has links to the ANC. Okay, questions? Remember, if you have no questions, to write no in the chats. Okay, let's move on. So ebooks, we use the exact same criteria as discussed for textbooks or any other books when assessing the reliability of an ebook. So there needs to be a copyright page, okay? And we need to understand, is this information reliable or not? Now, remember that anybody can self-publish these days, okay? So we really need to look at the information and to see if there is a publisher, okay? Who the publisher is. Exactly the same case of an ebook, okay? So we must find as much information about the author, their goals, their biases, and determine if they are qualified to speak on this topic. You'll find a lot of information on the internet where you get these kind of ebooks that you can download, but you need to make sure that the information in there is credible as well, and the author is credible. okay? So just keep that in mind. When it comes to business, I can tell you for sure, we get like these ebooks from PwC and from Deloitte, and these are credible institutions in their particular fields, okay? So we must make sure that we look at credible institutions. What if the organization which you found information, where you found information does not provide the name of the author? So Nobushle, we spoke about this, okay? So guys, there are going to be times where you don't find the author. So you need to look at the Harvard referencing method, and you need to see how you go about referencing that information. There are definitely ways to reference that kind of information where there is no author, okay? Usually it will be, if you're talking about a website, Nobushle, you will see that you will have to put the website and link that information. Okay. Siga, what do you mean, how do we make sure that they are credible? We need, like we've just spoken about, we need to research and see about all the about all the points. Guys, academic literacy forms the basis of all your other subjects, because remember, you're going to use this when you research for information in everything else. Okay, so it's not complicated. It's just that we have to make sure that we look at the criteria, look at the information and assess who's the author. Okay, does it have evidence? Does it have a bibliography? Okay, so it's important for us to do some research on who wrote the information. Okay, remember guys, we use these tools in all of our academic work. That's why we do this subject. Also to make you more aware of what's happening in the world around you. I know a lot of students are quite scared, especially about the credible information, about the paraphrasing, about the plagiarism. Okay, it's normal. It's normal. But I think in the next lecture, we will do we'll have a class. You can bring your assignments, your assessments, and we can talk about it before, I think it's the last lecture before the final submission date. Okay, so remember, write down your questions, etc. And then we'll discuss it in the next class. But yes, we must use credible information, find credible information, and use all the information that I've just spoken about to find out if this information is factual and credible and unbiased. Any other questions? Okay, let's continue. So journal articles, okay, so oftentimes I use a lot of journal articles, and I can tell you that at WITS, everything they do comes from a journal article, okay, or they've written something as a business case study that has tons of research in it, etc. Okay, so we have these kind of journal articles where experts share their discoveries and ideas with others who also work in that field. So I did tell you guys about ResearchGate earlier, where you can also find academically sound information. And it's important that we find out that these journals are legitimate first. So if you guys look, the Lancet is definitely one example where you can find academic information. So we need to see the author's professional memberships, okay? So who does this author belong to, okay? And what are some of the other authors' works that he's written or she's written, etc. The publisher of the journal is provided, okay? And it's published at regular intervals, okay? So you'll find often annually or biannually, you'll find these kind of journals. And it's often that you'll see them from publishing sites like the Lancet. So the advertisements in the journal are directed towards people in that particular field. So this actually tells us, okay, so it's directed towards doctors and these specific doctors, or it's towards engineers, or it's towards business people, etc. Questions? So I know that this is probably the most used one that most of you will consult, okay, websites. So websites are the easiest way for us to find information, but sometimes their reliability is harder to determine. Okay, why? Like we've said, somebody said that they couldn't find the author. So they lack this kind of information that help to determine whether the content is reliable. So I know, and I can tell you guys that when I write on WordPress, I don't have to include the author. I don't even have to include the publishing dates. Okay, and we do this because we're writing for information that's particular for Google, for a search engine. Remember, I told you, if I didn't, that information on the internet is done in a certain way for specific reasons when we write, okay? So we need to check and ascertain if the information that we receive from a website is reliable, okay? And how do we do that? So we look at the domain's URL, okay? And for example, if it ends in .gov, .za, .edu, okay, these kind of official URLs, it's a good idea to use them. The publisher or sponsor of the website is provided, so we know, okay, who is giving us this information that's on the website. The contact information is listed. There's evidence, and there are other sources listed. Okay, I think this is one of the main things that comes through. Okay, other sources and evidence. So whenever you get any kind of information, you need to see if it can be backed up with evidence, and there's links to other sources so you can research further and see what they're saying is actually true. The website was recently updated, of course, that makes perfect sense. And there's no clear evidence of bias. Okay, so remember guys, as we become more academic, we also need to understand our own biases. Okay, so sometimes you'll think something is not a bias because you believe it to be true, but it's not actually true, it's actually a bias. So we need to be more cognizant of this. We need to do more critical thinking, etc. Questions? So here we go. Let's see how we can ascertain whether this website is credible. Okay, so we see some information listed there. So firstly, we can see that this website ends in CL. Okay, so here, this africanpenguins.htm, this links us to a certain page. Okay, this is actually here, the website. This is going to take us to the page on the website. So the website ends in CL, which is the domain for Chile. What's the domain for South Africa? Excellent. No, Sugar. Sugar's getting so confused. So Sugar, it must come from it's going to say that it comes from a credible place. Okay, one of the ways that we can ascertain, this is just saying, this is talking about the example trigger. Okay, so we're saying if the information that we have has this ZA.com, by the way, if you guys don't know, .com is for America. Okay, that's why they use .com. So we're ascertaining if it's credible by looking at this kind of information here. So this comes from Chile, okay, and ours will be .za. Okay, so that's one of the things, and then America will be .com, and then India will be IN, etc., etc. So that's one of the ways that we can see that the information is credible. So official government websites tend to be more reliable than other kinds of websites. Of course, sometimes it is subject to bias. I'm not saying that it's not, but it can give us more factual information. Like we said, where was it on this previous slide, .gov.za. Okay, so when it ends in this kind of URL, or even .edu, okay, so it's going to give us more factual information. So now, if we go into this website, if we click into the link, we can find information about the author. Who's this author that wrote this information? And now this author works for the Western Cape Nature Conservation Board. So obviously that he has a lot of experience in penguins. Okay, remember that if we go back, we see that it's talking about penguins here, and African penguins particularly. So he is qualified to talk about this topic. Okay, and the site is also part of the International Penguin Conservation Work Group. So they have strong links to another organization, which would make the information more credible, because this International Penguin Conservation Group probably works and does research on penguins, etc. So these organizations are knowledgeable about the subject that they are talking about, okay? And we can find more information, more research information of what they say and what they do, and therefore it makes it credible. It's not just some random Serena on the internet writing about popcorn. By the way, my last blog post was about popcorn. That's why I'm mentioning popcorn. So this is what I'm saying, okay? They have experience, they have sufficient knowledge, they've studied these kinds of topics. Okay, so they are knowledgeable about this topic, so we can use this information and we can understand that it's credible. So I see a question in the chat. What happens if you are biased in the information you give in the assignment? So Nobushle, this is what we're saying, okay? So when we learn how to write academically, we must work according to the way that I taught you in when we were formulating paragraphs. So our topic sentence, our research evidence, and then our own opinion about it, okay? So yes, the research might involve a little bit more work, but it's going to make us better writers, so that when we go out into the work of the working world, we know what to do and what is being asked from us when we become copywriters or blog writers or content writers, etc. Okay, so we need to research. Research the information and make sure that what we're saying can be backed up. Okay. So here we go. Here is an example of an unreliable website. Okay, so it says here we see answers.yahoo.com. So this is Yahoo Answers. There's another one on the internet called Quora. If you guys don't know Quora, you can check it out. I'll put it here, but it's not reliable. By the way, I'm saying again, it's not reliable. I'm just giving you an example of these kinds of websites. So it's a website where anyone can ask a question or write an answer to the question. So basically, you're just asking the public for advice or information about a particular question, okay? So they don't necessarily need to be experts in their field, okay? It can be some Amanda from Santon, okay? And they don't actually need to give any real information. They can even write as, it can be anonymous as well. So we cannot ascertain if these people are experts, okay? So they don't have to provide any links or sources to support their answers. It's basically opinions. It's just opinions, personal experiences, etc. And this should tell us that the information on this website is unreliable. So remember, we're looking who the author is, who the publisher is. Are there links to any other sources? Okay, what evidence is given? And of course, you will obviously have this kind of information in your academic writing as well. So I can see that it's credible. Okay, I did see somebody's submission the other day on the internet. Somebody mistakenly uploaded the assignment as a comment. It had absolutely no research. It was basically, they were just writing their personal opinions. And I didn't tell this person this because I'm hoping this person comes to my lectures, but it was wrong. So evidence, research is extremely important. And yes, it might be difficult. So because it's difficult to determine whether a source is reliable, it's very important to use more than one source. Yes, I highly recommend this. We use various sources. So I don't just take information from one thing I read. I need to research more and see more and do more, okay? So I think this point came through strongly that we need to find other sources that confirm the information. Okay, it's not just one person that's writing this information. We find it in various other places as well. Questions, comments? Is there anyone that's confused? That's a little bit scared? Let me know, okay? And I'm going to help you. Okay, let's continue. So we can find reliable information in many different places, but there are obviously certain places that are going to have more credible information that we can use for our research and our writing. So where can we find these places? So the first place is an academic library, okay? So you will find your material that you can use for your writing. And of course, the size of the library will depend from school to school. I've been to Wits library once. I've been to UNISA's library as well, okay? So they obviously will have a lot of academic information that we can use and we can research for our topics that we are writing about. So they have the following services, okay? Borrowing books, instruction, referencing, donations, photocopies, etc. We can also get a book from a different library, okay? Of course, some universities are linked and we can get books from other libraries, but not all of these services are available to the public, okay? So I'm sure that Wits and UNISA restrict access. As you know, I have experience with these two universities only. So if you're from Boston Media House and you want to go use the Wits library, I doubt it's possible. Questions? So what is a library collection? Okay, so the types of books that a library has depends on its purpose. Of course, a community library will have nonfiction and fiction, okay? University libraries will have more specific collections on specific topics that are quite academic for people who work and study in specific fields, okay? So of course, they'll have information on medicine and business and various other topics that have been researched quite thoroughly. And then we get to rare book collections. So this is a collection of books that are rare because very few of them were published and they are old or they have a very unique quality. So libraries usually restrict access to these types of collections. I don't think I've ever come across a rare book collection. Has anybody come across a rare book collection? Yeah, I haven't either. Okay, and then we get archives. It's a collection of old material. So it can be anything from newspapers to government records, images, maps, or community history. Maybe Santon Library has archives, but I'm not too sure. Okay, so some libraries will have the original documents, but many scan original documents into their system so they can be viewed digitally. So this is the great thing about digitalization. Okay, we can view these archives, okay, that have been from 1970 or 1980, etc. So our encyclopedia is rare book. So it depends when it was published, okay, and what kind of information it has and how many copies there are of it, okay. So yeah, I think maybe more and more they are becoming rare. But also, I don't know if anybody still uses a physical copy of an encyclopedia anymore. Perhaps we all just use Google. But of course, there are people who value these kinds of books and they do keep them. Cool. Academic information online. So most libraries will have information that can be read digitally and online. And we need to understand how we can research and use these databases for our specific subject area. Okay, so we'll go to the university's library webpage, and then there will be a link to the library. UNISA has one, and ANVIT has one, and it's complicated to even understand how to use that, okay? So we need to even understand the process of how to search for information in these online libraries. Of course, there will be some enrollment or registration. Sometimes you even have to pay a fee if it's not a university library that you are going to, okay? Yes. And once you are in these databases, as I said, it's essential for you to understand how to do a search, okay? Because the search process can be complicated as well. Questions? Okay, so Trigger, you can write your thoughts to me in the chat. I'm going to read them. I just put the third meeting link in the chat, everybody, again. Okay, this meeting will finish in about 4 minutes, but let's continue. Okay, actually we're almost done, but we might just go into the third link. So guys, this is it's a really cool tool, an excellent tool to use to find academic material. Okay, it's Google Scholar. Has anybody used Google Scholar? Is this the first time you're hearing about Google Scholar? So we can access information from a variety of academic publishers, universities, and professional organizations. Okay, cool. So if it's something new, that's great. I am, in fact, teaching you something. So we can find books, articles, theses, research reports, peer reviews, papers, and abstracts in Google Scholar. I will take you to it now. Okay, so how do we find the most accurate information? We can find the most recent papers by clicking on Since Year or click by Sort Date, okay, and we can find information. Let me just take you to it rather. So, are we here? So here it is, okay, Google Scholar. So let's just say impact of COVID on education. And here we can find lots of information, and here we can search through the time that it was published. We can even do a custom range. We can sort by relevance or sort by date. Okay, so we see here 3 days ago, using the Irish survey of student engagement to understand the impact of COVID-19 on first-year undergraduate students. See, we can get lots of information. It's wonderful, it's amazing. Okay, if we go back to the PPT. So yes, as I said, we can find, let's go into the third meeting, guys. I know we're gonna have some questions, etc. So let's all go there. I'll stop this. Share, the link is in the chat. Guys, please mute yourselves. I think that I didn't have that function on this third meeting.
Yesterday, my blood pressure was 155/90.
Listening to somebody's blood pressure. That's interesting. Okay, cool. So let's continue. So yes, we can find the most recent information like I've shown you. Since here, okay, sort by date, etc., to find information on the topic that we are writing about. And then sometimes I'm going to answer your questions just now. Please mute, guys, mute. So sometimes we'll only get the abstract of the paper available to us, and we will have to see if we can find other information given in those links, okay? Because usually we have to subscribe to a specific database. The last time I clicked on an abstract and it was taking me to some website where I had to pay. Okay, so we can look and we can find other links or information that will give us information about that specific topic. We can find things that says related articles or more versions, etc. Okay, so it will provide links to other kind of sources that we can use for our writing. So I do see some information. Yes, so Trigger first asked, and I read this in his in the previous meeting. He said, academic literacy is about referencing, avoiding plagiarism, textbook reference, grammar. So remember we said it's about language skills, it's about digital literacy, information literacy, all these different kinds of literacies, and also math literacy. So remember here, we're trying to teach you how to become good citizens, to provide factual information, okay, in the online world, to do things correctly in the correct way, according to certain standards. Okay, so, and then we're also going to look at some digital skills. I'm hoping, I'm not sure if we're going to do it this year or next year. And then we're going to talk about Excel and maths as well. Okay, but very briefly, not too much. And we're going to do that in between April and May. Okay, but in your assessment, the final assessment, there will be some kind of maths literacy being asked of you. Okay, so it's not just English and, or should I say language literacy and information literacy. There's also math literacy and other different types of literacies. Okay, so ma'am, the information we find on Google Scholar is always reliable. So Omalema, this is what I'm going to say to everyone again. we need to look at the information that's given. We do still need to look at the author. We do still need to see if there's facts and evidence and links to other forms, other research about the topic. We need to see who the publisher is. We need to look at the publishing date, etc. Okay, so when we went through today's lecture, we looked at certain topics and we see how we ascertain if it is reliable. And we need to always keep that in mind when we are looking at any kind of information, whether it's from Google Scholar, whether it's from the internet, whether it's from a book, etc. Okay, and when we get to the second year, we talk about questioning the author, questioning the information that we have. Okay, so we need to develop our critical thinking skills. It's very important. Okay, any other questions? Is there anyone that's confused about something? Okay, so I guess we spoke about Google Scholar. Okay. I particularly don't know what it takes to put information onto Google Scholar. Okay, so maybe they have some criteria before articles get published. I will do more research on that. So perhaps it could be, listen to what I'm saying, it could be more reliable, but I don't know what the criteria is for uploading and publishing on Google Scholar. So yes, as I've said, if the information we find on Google Scholar is not what we need, we can click on related articles or cited by and find sources on similar topics, etc. Questions, comments? Yesterday, I was so upset because only 2 students came to my online lecture about this topic. 2. And you guys know the physical classes, they get really packed. There's like 50 of you in one class. So I wasn't very happy about that. All right, so is there anyone that wants to do the activity, or do you want to go and work on your assignments? Let me know in the chat. Guys, I'm waiting. Okay. Cool, so I hope this information was very useful. Okay, and it's going to help you. In our next class next week, it's going to be on campus. I know you guys love being on campus. We're going to discuss copyright infringements, and talk more about plagiarism, because I've been getting these emails, ma'am, if I cite it and I put the author, is it plagiarism? Is it not plagiarism? Okay, so there is still some confusion because we are still just beginning to learn about these kind of topics. So if we look on page 5A, page 171. Okay. We're just going to talk about what academic research is, why we need it. Okay, so a lot of people do want to work on the assignments. Okay, but I do recommend these activities. They are going to help you. But I know that also you have a lot to do with your assignments as well, and it is a little bit stressful, but this information that we did today is going to help you with all your assignments. Okay, so good luck to everybody. next week, we'll do some questions about your assignment, so come prepared. Not the first lecture, the second one next week, where I'll handle any questions that you may have or you want to discuss with me, etc. Okay, so have a good weekend, guys, and see you all next week. Thanks very much for coming to the lecture. Bye. Thank you, Sadie.